Welcome back to part 2 of the Ruler of the Skies card comparison video. This half will cover Fighting, Dark, Metal Dragon, and Colorless. Compared to the last Makuhita, this latest one loses 10 damage and 10 HP to get a partially colorless energy cost. At first this just looks like a total downgrade, but all the Hariyamas bar 1 have a colorless energy too. So using an off-color baby like Mantike to meet the energy requirement is a legitimate thing you could do. As for the new Hariyama, this latest one is actually the strongest of the 4, and its detrimental effect is mitigated by playing Hala, so I think it's generally just a better version of the Megaton Slap one. I don't think this card is good, but I do think it's the best one here, and I do think you could potentially get wins with it versus top meta decks, especially if the opponent doesn't have a way to prevent you from playing Hala to attack 2 or 3 turns in a row. Both Groudons are high-cost basics with Titanic retreat costs, which is usually a recipe for disaster. The new one is cheaper and doesn't discard your extremely precious fighting energy, so I think it's better, but both of these are an active liability to include. I can't wait for Groudon EX or Primal Groudon since I think both of those are inevitable and DNA will actually try to make them good. The new Drillbur is fighting type to match the new Excadrill, which I think is a playable card. If you're using it, you should use the new Drillbur, which has generally better stats than the other two. Timburr's new card has more HP and power, but a higher price. You could go either way here. For Gurdurr, you coin flip between 30 and 60 damage, which is a higher average than the old one, plus it potentially hits a more valuable benchmark, so it should just be a flat improvement. The new Conkeldurr doesn't have the old one's excellent ability, but you still have good HP, potential for heavy helmet, and workable damage. The problem with both of these cards is that while they're only one knockout point, losing 3 energies doesn't really allow you to go out into a win con. These two don't quite work well enough to be closers themselves, but require so much investment they take away from your actual closers. As usual, you'd rather just set up Mega Lucario. Both Minior cards are surprisingly good. The old one does 40 damage to any target for 2 energies, which amusingly makes it an asteroid which hard counters dinosaur Pokemon by killing them while they're fossils. But 2 energies is hard to justify over something like Hitmonlee. The new Minior is abysmally weak versus most targets, but gets bonus damage versus abilities. Most notably, it can actually one-touch Oricorio due to weakness, while also slotting into any deck thanks to its colorless energy requirement. Plus, it's very low investment since it only needs 1 energy to attack or retreat. As I've said, it's probably splashable into decks which are abysmally weak to Oricorio, such as Entei Zard or Hitmonchan EX. Grimer's latest card has the same damage as the original, but it's probably worse since the poison on the original can persist after the first attack, while also setting up Muk's Venoshock. The lower retreat cost is also a downgrade since you lose Heavy Helmet, plus you might not care about retreat thanks to Koga. I think the first Grimer is generally the best of these. The new Muk is surprisingly quite good, with its low investment and high HP and retreat costs synergizing excellently with Koga to make a strong early game attacker. I don't think any of these 3 are especially good in the current era, but you could absolutely get wins with this latest one, even against top meta decks. Poochyena always draws 1 card, and can draw 2 if both of your Poochyenas are in play. I think even drawing 1 card is better than 20 damage, so the new one is much better to me. The Mightyena is a 1 energy attacker, and is workable, especially with Deceptive Needle, allowing you to potentially knock out an evolving basic on turn 3 or 4. It's definitely the better of these 2. New Zigzagoon trades HP for power, take your pick. The fact that the new card is colorless is presently inconsequential. For the Linoone, you lose power but get an effect which switches you out with your bench mons, which can be good or not based on your deck. The old Obstagoon was actually buffed somewhat by Deceptive Needle. You can knock something out and the new mon will take 10 damage upon switching in. 120 damage on 2 energies is no joke, and 70 on 2 isn't even horrible. The new one is more expensive and does less damage, but being able to hit anything on the field is very powerful, especially in the endgame. Plus, the energy stalling with Pierce can allow you to use this repeatedly without getting knocked out. Both Obstagoon cards are decent, but I think the old one is probably a bit better. Running 1 of each is possible too, of course. New Absol does 20 normally, but 50 with a tool, which is actually a great benchmark, especially with Deceptive Needle. Its HP isn't amazing, but it's good enough to function as an early game card. I think it is functional in top tier competitive play, but the leap over Absol is also viable thanks to its ability to mark damage on bench targets. Which one is better will depend on your deck. Vullaby's old card just does 20 damage, the new one swaps itself with a bench Pokemon. I think the old one is significantly better for a few reasons. 1, the old Mandibuzz can only hurt targets which are already wounded, so a Vullaby that can't attack is a huge downside. 2, neither Mandibuzz is a late game card, so Vullaby switching itself to safety has no real purpose. As for the Mandibuzz cards, the new one actually has some very impressive damage if you're lucky, but it's too inconsistent to use. The old one is much better due to its very interesting synergy with Greninja, Darkrai, or Deceptive Needle. Skarmory's new card is colorless, which is more of a novelty than anything. The minor increase in HP compared to the old one is nice, but the old one actually does more damage on 1 energy than the new one does with 2, with only the condition that you use a tool, which are worth running in metal decks anyway. The old Skarm is a fantastic early game staple for metal decks, and the new one doesn't come close in my opinion. The latest Mawile flips between 40 and 60 for 2 energies. This is the same average damage as the Cavernous Chomp Mawile, but does hit a slightly better benchmark. All 6 of these cards are bad, and thus the best one is either Crunch or Bite, just because they're the lowest investment. Old Escavalier actually has very good damage for 1 energy, and marking damage on bench targets is very useful in the long term. It used to be a way of building Solgaleo decks, and it probably still is functional today. The newer one has pretty good damage for 2 energies and nice bulk, but both the lower investment and higher utility of the old one make it better in my eyes. Our original Genesect has infinite damage ramp, but it's one of those cards that needs too much energy for its relatively low HP. Additionally, it's a high retreat basic. The new one has lower investment, but a detrimental attack effect. You could use the new one to kill Oricorio, I suppose, but both of them look bad to me. The latest Varoom has a cheaper retreat cost than the Suffocating Gas one, but it loses damage. The good Revavroom lets you retreat for free anyway, so Suffocating Gas is better, and honestly it might be the best of these thanks to its good damage and HP, though you could run any of them. The new Revavroom has the extremely novel ability to use 2 tools at once, but its extremely high energy cost just makes it completely unusable. I'd definitely be using Metal Transport over any of the others. All 3 colorless Dratinis have the same average damage. The best one is probably Tail Strike since it has the highest chance of hitting 30. The new Dragonair allows you to attach discarded energies to Dragon Pokemon, so it's obviously the best if you're not running Dragonite, and it might be the best in general. But Sky's Blessing is still quite good if you're running Draco Meteor Dragonite or Dragonite EX. As for the Dragonites, the new one is fantastic for its guaranteed energy destruction and good stats in general. The middle one is fantastic since it can now attack every turn just by having your other Dragonair on the bench. And the original has gotten much better thanks to Drayden. All 3 of these cards seem quite strong thanks to support from this set. I actually think the Hyper Beam one is extremely slept on and probably completely viable in top level play, but I've never seen it. Obviously the OG one hitting for 250 per attack is very powerful too. Amusingly, both of these Rayquazas are technically competing for deck slots. The colorless one has an insane cost compared to its average damage, and probably 0 practical use. The Dragon one is potentially a recipient of Ho-Oh's energy, but there's a half dozen recipients I'd consider before this, and on any other deck it looks restrictively slow. The latest Drampa has workable bulk and good damage, and it sets up very quickly with help from Rainbow Cave and Dragonair. It's considered one of the premier attackers as the lead into Mega Rayquaza. Both of the old Drampas have a bit of a new life with the same setup, but all 3 do the same damage and the latest one has the most reliable performance. Additionally, you don't mind the discarding in a Rayquaza deck, where the energies can just be recycled. New Rattata has higher HP than the original, and the best damage potential of all 3, so it should be the best of them. The new Raticate has an ability which draws up some items from your deck, which could be useful for getting rare candy or fossils or something, but I've never seen anyone try and use it. Regardless, this effect makes it much more useful than the other 2. Here's our 12 Eevees. The latest one flips 2 coins and averages 20 damage, which is basically like the continuous steps Eevee without the fringe chance of an instant kill. The best Eevees are either Boosted Evolution or Eevee EX, depending on what you're evolving into. Our new Ambipom is a bit stronger but a bit slower than the others. I'd probably use the Imitate one to go for a card advantage personally. The Ambipom is a generic 2 energy attacker and is much worse than the one which draws tools. We've got 2 new Skitties counting the promo. One mitigates damage and one flips between 40 and 0. We've had a lot of cards like this set, and it just depends on whether you more so value the consistency or the potential for a baby knockout. Honestly, all 4 of these are okay. The latest Delcatty is quite interesting, allowing you to freely move your energies around, including from itself. It's quite a novel concept, and it might have some synergy eventually, but I can't think of any deck right now where you'd want to use it. All of the Delcatty cards are quite weird, and all are playable based on your deck, but none are meta at all. Our new Ducklett is colorless to match our Swanna. It's unable to hit weakness, but otherwise mildly bulkier than the flap one. Basically no one is running Swanna right now, but the OG Ducklett might be the best just because of Lycia. Swanna EX pairs quite well with babies, and having so many low HP cards makes Lycia better. The new Furfrou does 20 damage normally, but 70 if you just lost a Pokemon. I normally like these effects, but this one's base damage is just too low. The whole gimmick of Furfrou is that it's an early game card with extra staying power thanks to Fur Coat, and it's just terrible when your extra turn surviving only gives you the ability to hit 20 damage in the middle game. I think the best ones are still Double Headbutt or Tackle. Our last 2 cards are Type Null and Silvally. The new Type Null is generally just worse than the old one, which can mark a little damage before evolving and potentially do double the damage in the same number of turns. The new Silvally does a massive 150 damage to EX targets for 3 energies, which is enough to knock out almost anything but Megas. But I think the speed at which the old one activates plus the lower investment make it a bit more appealing to me. They specialize in beating different targets and both work with almost any ally, so it depends on what you're trying to do with the rest of your deck. Anyway, that's the last of them. Thanks for watching.